there's this very sort of gruesome example floating around out there right now that's used to support the doctrine of once saved, always saved, and to vilify those who support the doctrine of conditional security. And I've started to see this more and more, even at the higher levels within Christianity. And so I wanted to do this video to expose this teaching. And it's this right here. It's that since I have a son, and I could never see myself sending my son to hell for eternity because he makes a mistake, then therefore that means that conditional security can't be true. That once saved, always saved is true. And guys, this is such fallacious reasoning, but it's being promoted, like I said, at the higher levels of Christianity, especially on YouTube. Leighton Flowers, for example, of Soteriology 101, uses this as an example where he gets to kind of towards one of the end of one of his videos on once saved, always saved. And he says, basically, listen, when it comes down to it, I could never see myself doing this to one of my sons, to sending my son to hell because he messed up. And he insinuates that therefore once saved, always saved can't be, or once saved, always saved is true. And also Spencer Smith, who's got well over 100,000 subscribers, he's said this in one of his videos on once saved, always saved also. But what he said was even more shocking. He gave an example of it being like God leaving his son at a gas station, or like a father leaving his son at a gas station, like his small child, and just squealing the tires and leaving him there at this gas station because he made a mistake. Now, this is not at all what the Bible teaches. This isn't even what most people that hold to conditional security feel the Bible teaches. So this is a straw man argument, but I wanted to go through and see what the Bible actually says about this. And I wanted to start with one of the answers is actually in Isaiah 55. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that people that hold to this example are making. And it's this, Isaiah 55, 8 through 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. You see, just because we wouldn't do something doesn't mean that God won't do it, because his ways are higher than our ways, okay? I mean, we wouldn't send somebody to hell for eternity. I mean, if you want to look at it like that, there's a lot of things that we wouldn't do, okay? And by saying this, it evokes this very emotional response. But guys, I want to keep this biblical. I want to dive in and see what the Bible actually says and not use these very emotional and visceral responses. So let's analyze this, dive into the Bible and see what it says about this. First of all, let's look back in the Old Testament. In Deuteronomy 21, 18 through 21, what was the penalty for a child who was stubborn and rebellious and refused to listen to his parents? What did God tell him to do? What did God tell the parents to do? It says this, if a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, will not listen to them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city at the gate of the place where he lives. And they shall say to the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the cities shall stone him to death with stones. You shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Now, listen, I know that this is the Old Testament, and I know you're going to say, well, that was the Old Testament. But still, the penalty for a disobedient child that God commanded parents was that the parents take their child to the elders and have him stoned to death. Okay, this is what it says. This is what God commanded parents to do. But if we just look at this, it wasn't that God commanded them to do this on a whim. The first time the child makes a little mistake, they weren't to just bring him and have him stoned. No, it says he will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, he will not listen to them. So they've tried disciplining him. They've tried reasoning with him. They've tried, various things, and he still is being stubborn, it says, stubborn and rebellious, and will not listen to them. then they're to take him to the elders and have him stoned. And also, some people might say that this is referring to small children. This is not referring to small children, guys. If we just look down here, it says he is a glutton and a drunkard. Okay, this isn't talking about like a 4-year-old child that's a drunkard. This is talking about either an adult child or a child who is close to the age of adulthood. Now, in the New Testament, if we just look at the New Testament in the story of the prodigal son, in Luke 15, we see that the son left his father's house. Okay, it wasn't that that the father just took him to a gas station and dropped him off because the son made a mistake. That wasn't at all what happened. What happened was he wanted to go off into wild living, and he left his father's home. Well, how do we leave our father's home spiritually? We leave it by going off into sin. We stray as sheep by going off into sin. And this is exactly what he did. He went off into sin, and he wanted to do what he wanted to do. He left the safety and the comfort as much as it boggles our mind why he would do that. It's the same thing why it boggles our mind why Christians would leave all the benefits and the comfort and the protection of our Father's home to go off in and do what we want. But this happens. I mean, we see this happen, and we even see this happen in the physical world today, where there's so many stories of adoption cases where, let's say this 15-year-old girl gets adopted and the family's so good to her. It's a Christian home. They're good to her. They care for her. They buy her things that she needs. They feed her. They offer all kinds of love. And what happens? This is very common. If you talk to DCS, this is very common that they run away and they go live with a friend, or they go live somewhere else, and they don't want to be with the adopted parent, even though the parent has shown them so much love and put so much aside in their life to take this child in. They still are not thankful, and they run off, and they don't want any part of their new mother and father. But what I want to show you in this parable is the condition of this son when he left. What happened to him? Well, it says that he spiritually died. Look at this. In verse in 15, 20, 23, and 24, it says, "And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And they began to celebrate. See, the penalty for him going off, it wasn't physical death. He didn't physically die, and he wasn't physically lost. He was spiritually lost. This is talking about spiritual. He was spiritually lost, and he was spiritually dead. That was the result of what happened from him straying from the Father. Okay? This is what the Bible talks about all the time, is that we are on a path, that we must continue on this path following Jesus. And if we stray from this path, that path leads to death. This is all throughout the Bible. The wages of sin is death. And again, in case you think that might be a fluke, he says it again in Luke 15:32. He says, "It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found." So he only became alive again when he went back to his father, when he repented. And this is what everybody who strays from the path has to do. They have to repent and go back to their father, go back to God, ask for mercy, and ask for him to give you life. His words are life. If we follow him, we're granted eternal life. We have to be with him, though. We have to stick with him. We have to stay on the path. We can't be a prodigal son. Now, another issue with this whole argument is that being a son and daughter isn't the only analogy that God uses to demonstrate his relationship with us. It's only one of several. For example, in the parables, Jesus over and over and over again uses the word servant to refer to Christians. He uses the servant-master relationship. And what does he say to the servants that are not obedient? Let's say to the one in Luke where he ends up just beating the servants and doing what he wants to do and getting drunk. Well, it says that he's going to come back and cut him to pieces. This is talking about Christians. And so it's this servant-master relationship as one aspect of our relationship that he compares us to. But it's not just that, it's also he calls us his bride, right? Luke 5:35 and Revelation 22:17, he calls us his bride. And if we just look in Jeremiah, okay, what happened in Jeremiah when they were adulterous and disobedient? Well, God divorced them, right? And so there's different relationships that he compares us to. It's not only a son. If we look at friends, he calls us his friend, right? In James 2:23, he said that Abraham obeyed God and he called him a friend. But why was he called a friend? Well, he was called a friend because he obeyed God. And this is right in step with what Jesus says in John 15:14, where he says that you are my friend if you do what I command you. It's a conditional statement. You're his friend if you obey him. And then lastly, some might even argue that 2 Corinthians 6:1 says that we are co-workers, that this may be another way that God relates to us relationship-wise. When it says that, as co-laborers with Christ, he's urging them not to receive the grace of God in vain. So there's many different ways that God refers to our relationship with him. And that's all I got for today. Guys, don't be deceived by this very emotional and visceral example. Okay, we need to be students of the Word. We need to stay in the Word, study the Word, and believe it. Okay, and not be led astray by any sort of emotional argument. Okay, we need to be Bereans about this and not be deceived. God bless.